Hi everyone, welcome to the Prime U series of interviews with top business and technology experts. Today I'm delighted to welcome Geeta Pine, who is Chief Enterprise Architect for Platform and Architecture at Intuit. Geeta, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, and I would like to start off our conversation with your career that I believe is punctuated with some amazing experiences of working at high-tech companies like VMware, Zuora, Veritas Technology, and now Intuit. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on the steps in your career that have led you to your current position.
Sure thing. So Geeta Pine, I'm currently, as you said, I'm the Chief Architect for Enterprise Architecture for Intuit. But my career goes back. I started actually I'm from India, as you can see, and I did my engineering in India. My first job was actually worked in India's Space Research Organization, which is kind of like, you can think about like NASA for India. So my first job was really working with really smart people, building a core foundation in how do you make sense of satellite data. So I started the journey with data before big data was a thing, and really understanding and unpacking how can you leverage data to whether for remote sensing, like, for vegetation or for, satellite communication and whatnot, right? Then fast forward, actually, as you saw, like about last 20 years, I have been in US in various positions. I actually moved like more like a very deep technical engineer to becoming like a tech lead, to becoming like an architect, mostly like a tech career progression within a very, very deep technical domain. And I did actually many different industries. So from electronic, like healthcare at Mount Sinai to aero electronics. So my journey had been like, how do I learn? How do I pick up new skills as well as solve real hardcore business problem? And while doing that, what is the technology trend that I am following? So how can I learn real practical experiences, which is why I was the first, for .com 20 years back when .com was the new thing for every brick and mortar. So I was the lead tech lead and architect too fast. Then I, embraced the cloud journey, embraced the more like a SaaSification. And now I'm actually at the Intuit. So I have also done, while doing technical, like deep technical roles, but most of my role being like as an architect role, which was more like influence without authority, but at the same time rallying. So I love that transformation journey. I love bringing people along with you as much as I love technology, I love people. So then I started actually also taking direct management roles because somebody saw in me like, I could actually transform and bring not just company, but also high performing teams. So that's how I'm kind of like, I love working with smart people. I like to have fun and just do something like really every day, go and solve some hard problems.
Yeah, just as you said, you have this long and successful career in a variety of tech companies. And I assume you had to hire many people, different people for different roles. So maybe you could share with us the secret to building high performing teams.
Yeah, great question. I think, and especially in today's day and age with the great resignations or whatever is going on, the talent is the hardest thing now, right? So the way I look for, one is definitely the domain that you are going to bring in, right? So you want to make sure people have the domain experience, but the more like the skills that I look for are people that are hungry, the people that are curious, the people that are going to, ask you those tough questions and challenge the status quo. So that's number one, like, do you, and then secondly, are you a team player? Like as much as you can be really great in, you and I know it takes a village to really get anything done. So I don't like somebody who can be the brilliant jerk in my team, but I would rather have a little bit less, brilliance, but who is willing to learn, who is to grow and complement, supplement. So that's the number two. And third is like the grit, right? Things will go wrong. Are you willing to sign up for the grit that it takes, like the courage, the kind of resilience can you build, because things will go wrong and you have to be tough and you have to be able to pick yourself up and go. So those are some of the softer things I look. And of course it is an org design. I love building team in a way. This is like a system design, right? You pick up what you need, who you need and how do you bring the best out of every people you have in the team and put the right people in the right boxes. So they say like get the right people in the bus and then things will happen. So or design the org in a way that there is also growth opportunities. So don't get all A players, don't get all in the equal skills, right? Mix and match. But more importantly, I think people that you can always learn any new skill. You can develop that once you have the core foundations also very good, and you can then branch out and learn. But if you have hunger, if you're willing to do something, learn new, and you want to work with people, that I think you already have earned a ticket in, like, to have a conversation and get an interview.
Yeah, I really like the point where you say that it's very important to bring people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and maybe different visions to enable that cross-pollination of ideas.
Yes, exactly. Because diversity, we talk about it, and it's just not about like men, women, right? It is also how we think. Because if we don't have that mindset about how we all think things differently, we all know we can all see this mouse, but we can all interpret very different things. And that's what can bring the best out of like whatever things you are working on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I believe that mixing all of the experiences and backgrounds can actually do the magic, right, to the project that people are working on. They bring their unique insights, they bring their unique vision, the background and experience, and all of this can greatly benefit the company they are working at and also the solution that they are delivering. Yeah, Geeta, I've checked your profile and I can see that in your past roles and your current role, you're dealing a lot with data architecture. So maybe you could share with our listeners what are the preferred tooling for handling huge volumes of data at companies like Intuit?
So great question. I think in my all these years, right, I think the hardest thing is always, making sense of the data in the right context and in the right point. And like, as I said, the viewpoints are different. You might look at a number like 20, you might be thinking 20 is at an age of somebody, or is 20, the year we are in, or is that date, right? So how do you bring all these things together, right? So what I have been observing, and even Intuit, I have been here only over a year. So I'm still learning the Intuit system and where we are and where we need to go. But what's happening in the industry is this whole data fabric thing, right? So how do you connect every device like at the edge to all the way up to when you have to make sense? And so one is, how do you connect all these things together? How do you ingest the data? How do you process and then drive insight? But pushing a lot of this compute to a closer to the data is happening. So I think the shift we are also at Intuit having is, because it is a 38-year legacy company, right? So we also had the way of how, like, you start pulling data in, then you get into downstream system, then you have your BI and analytics, right? But what's happening is now is we are looking at technologies that allows data streaming, that allows eventing, that allows analytics while doing streaming. And then how can you do also data virtualization? Because how can you think about no copy integrations? Because as soon as you move data and you copy from one to the other, there is like not only data copy is a bad thing, but also then you have those regulations, right? Privacy, GDPR. Exactly. So the moment you get a request, now you have everywhere. So what is changing at Intuit, and I think in the industry also, is how can you build in a secure, like in a way, that kind of a data fabric that can virtualize, that can access this fragmented data, but also I think what is the most challenging is how do you make sense of the data quality that so-and-so identified by, I might have a trace in one system with, with Intuit's email, somewhere I might have my personal email, but how do I know that I'm the same person? And also do that, just because you can doesn't mean you should. How do you do that with my consent, right? So this blending, and we are all learning at the same time. So our technologies have, like, we are obviously 100% on the clouds. We are able to leverage the resiliency, the scalability that you get with the cloud technologies, right? Whether you talk about data lake or the data warehouse, but it is a mix. But then where we are getting in is how do you uplift level that in the business context, in the customer context, in the B2B to the B2C, all these things together, and push as much as it closer with the goal of you do not want to move data unless you have to.
Yeah, Geeta, you've just a little bit touched on security, and I believe that for companies like Intuit, it's very important to actually secure the data, make the access to that personal financial data of millions of users very secure.
Yeah, and also understanding the risk profiles, right? I mean, because we are in the business of financial, like whether accounting, we are kind of the system of record or for small businesses, right? So understanding when you can pay, who should you pay, or understanding your financial profile, the risk profile, and making sure we are making the small businesses and the consumers to make the right decision. We have a fiduciary responsibility with the data, financial data that we are owning on behalf of our customers, right?
Yeah, there are many big data solution stacks, and maybe you could share with us what specific stack do you use? Do you use Hadoop stack? Do you leverage Cassandra, MongoDB? Which of these is preferred at companies and enterprises like Intuit?
We do have all of the above because it's kind of grown over the years, right? And for different data, like we have customer data platform, we have customer master data, we have product information data, like all this, right? At the same time, making this. So the journey started, there's Hadoop still there, which personally, I do not, I'm a believer because I think Hadoop is great, but it is an infrastructure. They haven't made it accessible easily for somebody to really build applications, right? So where I think that's where you see the newer, where the newer architectural patterns with the, we are, whether it is Redshift or Snowflake, but getting into that, but then bringing in like a lake house concept, like a Databricks, right? So we are bringing that. So now, because as I said, like that fabric is now expanding. So it is not just in one data that I have, but I should be able to see things that are happening in real-time streaming, things that are happening in transactional system. How do you correlate that, right? So that's where we are coming in. And I think that's the pattern. So as much, I think Hadoop will be there because it has been, again, just like mainframe is still there. But I think modern world, if I think like an S3, like if I can have something like a, objects, like a simple interface that can allow me to schemaless way to pull any data in, and then allows me to go in a tier mode, whether I have data in unstructured data in S3, do I have some structured data, maybe whichever databases I have, whether Postgre, Dynamo or whatnot, and then also some things that in a higher dimension. So basically, if I have a tooling, it should be allowing me, if I have data in lowest attribution, to also going into higher level of aggregation, but I can, I can drill down anytime and also move that in a time scale, the data. That's my nirvana, right? That's the architecture we are striving. And I think that's what is happening. And the technology is getting easier and better now to make things happen. But what is still is, again, it goes back to my, just because you can, technology can make you happen, but you cannot, because you have the right customer consent, do you have the right, all those, compliance rules, and can you build that within the access patterns to ensure that you are doing what you are legally compliant to do?
Yeah, actually, many enterprises recognize that working with data requires minimizing, mitigating security risks, demonstrating compliance and agility. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think you talked about modern architecture way, right? I think in the modern architecture, I think some of the things like data quality, I think it has been a topic for years, but this is the year of 2022, as in my lens, my humble opinion, is the year of data governance, and data quality finally becomes like really everybody's attention, because now everybody can access data and you can make the data accessible and visible just as soon as you start seeing it. And if the data is like, left hand doesn't match with right hand, somebody's, will pay attention to it. So whether the newer ways of thinking about it, whether Soda.io or Atlan or DBT or the like traditional people that we knew of in the past, I think we'll see a lot of, whether it is Informaticas or, Calibras, I think you will see a lot more next level of applying that into the modern data architecture as a first-class citizen right from the get-go, not afterthought.
I know that in the past several years, Intuit has completed several important acquisitions to be able to provide a comprehensive suite of products to their customers worldwide. But I was wondering, what is your opinion on the challenges that acquisitions present to engineering and technology leaders within the organization, and how do you actually overcome these challenges?
Yeah, I think if there were no challenges, then you wouldn't need people like us. But on the serious note, I think one thing is at Intuit we do really well is we have architecture, enterprise architecture is at the center of everything as an Intuit as a company. And what I mean by that is the business architecture and the business capabilities that Intuit has. So we have, capability taxonomy that represents all of Intuit. So when you think about, and those capabilities are the way we look at it, goes through evolution and it goes through how we organize. So the company, how we organize ourselves, how we have extreme ownership, how we are organized for success and delivery is driven through how our capabilities are organized. For example, if you are talking about, say, TurboTax, like tax capability, right? Or we're doing accounting, or even as you go down the layer, like, common fundamental things that how you do intelligence, how you do data, we group them in things we call like using domain-driven design, you group them, right? So that becomes your North Star of, and the playbook, how you should be thinking about. And then as architect, we start helping people to define the maturity model of those capabilities to say, what's your current state versus future state? And can we start using that to inform what should you acquire or not? So that's kind of the framework and playbook from architecture across the organization to help. But the other side now, as soon as you know little about the technology, like some due diligence, right? But once you get those assets in, how do you make sure that? So the challenges are now, as we were talking about the data, right? You will have, because you have applications in both places that are creating or handling the similar type of data objects, right? So how do you start bringing those rationalization? I think one of the bigger challenge with not only just Intuit, I think every company is going through is, how do you shift that mindset of data at the center versus building applications? Like instead of applications creating data, what data do you need to serve to your capabilities that you need for your customer or whoever you're serving it, right? So that's one thing we are right now dealing with. We have our strategic goal, right? 6 years, 3 years plan that you got to go and deliver. At the same time, you have obviously along the way, got some technical debt because 38 years back, what worked is may not or be as relevant now, right? So how do you balance that renovation with innovation? At the same time, you go and execute on your committed goals, right? So that's the challenge. I think not so much unique about Intuit. I think most any company that has any growth, unless your business is not changing, I think it is the same way we are dealing. Good news for Intuit, as I said, the architecture at the center, and from the CEO to the CTO, everybody believes in that vision that we need extreme ownership and accountability. So we might argue like who owns what, but we will settle on, okay, here is how the capability should be organized, and the corresponding, whether it is product engineering leader, whether it is architecture leader, whether it is product management, they will be accountable to deliver within that.
Yeah, it would be, interesting to know, how do you make sure that this integration with the acquired company goes smoothly on every level, right? That we have personal level, technology level, communication, culture, right? There can be so many things that you actually have to work on just to make sure that that acquisition works out well for the company and for the business.
I think it's a lot of obviously collaboration and conversation, right? Making sure people get, I think again, technology, once you get to that understanding, I think technology becomes lesser of the challenge, right? So to your point about so how do you how do you get the people or the personal biases out and make it more objective. So we try to have those like principles driven discussion, because at the end of the day, what is the Intuit's mission, right? So anything we do, how does align that to the top level Intuit's mission? How does that translate into the next level principles that we have? So we try to have very like a, I would say, data driven decision making with like mission principles, and then coming into a consensus on where it should belong, right? So it takes a lot of work. Pandemic hasn't been easy. Like for me, starting during the pandemic, I'm now in office because once we started opening up slowly, it was very, very hard, because it is the people makes the job, right? I mean, it is, you need to talk to people and to see, and the things that aren't told are the most important things. And that you cannot gather just by scheduling a meeting, right? Just by walking and observing, you pick those signals and the body languages that help you to really understand where you may have communicated or who hasn't been able to understand your vision yet, right?
Yeah, you brought up this important topic of COVID, and I know that you started the job at Intuit in the middle of the pandemic, a little over a year ago. So I was wondering about the difficulties for you as a new person in the company. How did you deal with the necessity to instill your authority, right? To bring your vision, to make sure that people align with it, and more.
First of all, regardless of pandemic or not, I think what your experience get you a ticket in the door, right? Once you get in, nobody cares, honestly, right? You have to build up. So you have to, from day one, start building building your credibility and reputation, and so on. Of course, pandemic makes it hard. So I would say my first 3 months were much slower than how would I have accelerated, say, when I went to VMware or Veritas, just because I am a people's person. I'm not used to I can't read all day long and do my work. That's just my challenge. I learn by observing, right? So that was my challenge. Now, how do I do it, right? I think just for my role, again, getting back to laying out your strategy, laying out your roadmap, and start, socializing that with your stakeholders, know your stakeholders, understanding what their goals are, and aligning. Like typically what you would do, same thing, only thing is that now it is a little harder. You have to do extra miles to find out who do you need to talk to, who are the decision makers. But one thing is good, like within Intuit, is like people are very helpful, but you have to know who to talk to, right? Yeah. So if you know who to talk to, they will give you all the time, right? So I had to spend more time in I usually do a mind map of what I need to do. So for each of those areas, I'll start putting people's names and start then building one by one, one step at a time. Who's the most important? Even it starts with your own team, with your own manager, because they don't know you, right? They don't know you. I like to crack humor when I'm working on it, right? Because I don't like just doing hard work, because you have to have fun in what you do. So that took in building those relationships took me time. And but once you start, I think you start to then get your one win. I had one goal of, say, getting one of our tooling around, you talk about tooling around data earlier. So we had a tooling around this capabilities for, our enterprise architecture, and helping to bring the right tooling, helping to give them the right support and a framework that now enables the company. That's the first win, that now people can do their job because you are able to give them a framework and tooling that they were missing, right? So just as one example. So you start then one by one attacking what is most important. Don't try to solve everybody's problem. And, as much as my brain usually goes, I'm always listening, but you have to really narrow down your focus on what matters and what one or two things you're going to do to establish yourself an authority. You talked about being an authority. How do you establish yourself as an authority in your domain, your brain? Nobody cares. I might know 100 other things, but if I'm brought in for enterprise architecture, I better have a solid way of showing value of enterprise architecture before I branch out to anything else.
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring back the topic of architecture and talk a little bit about serverless computing and serverless architecture. I know that the technology is getting its traction in the industry, and many companies and enterprises, even tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft, are pushing for the technology. So I was wondering, what is your opinion on the technology and whether you use it to optimize your products at Intuit?
Yes, yes. So, but so my personal opinion, it is not Intuit's, right? I think serverless is the next, wave of virtualization or the next wave of computing, really, right? I'm a strong believer of serverless, right? And it is at every layer, right? So when we talk about, before I go into the compute, like, if I'm leveraging a cloud, anything, I don't want to be in the business of, maintenance of, okay, having another DBA or a system admin, right? So I would like to have take the advantage of anything that is offered, as a way of, as a service, right? And only pay as you go model, right? And I don't want to, just spin off everything when we need, right? So, and then coming to the compute, I think we are of course using, but you have to be, disciplined about when and where to use, right? Starting small, I think there are use cases, just like that's why design patterns exist. One size doesn't fit all. When to use what? I think serverless has a huge place, right? I mean, 4 years back, I think at Veritas, I started doing it with telemetry, because telemetry is something that clearly a candidate, right? And using telemetry and bringing the first serverless SaaS application for having visibility into the telemetry was my first cloud native, serverless way for Veritas, right? But that set the pattern. So I believe in this, but you have to be cognizant about the limitations that you might have, right? So what kind of workloads? So do not go wild west and give everybody, like, just because it is the next shiny toy, but having those what not to do, or what are the kind of use cases you want to put for that, because like whether it is the memory, whether it is the initial cold startup time, and whatnot you have, right? You are obviously not going to put a long running process to run into a serverless architecture, right? So I think those workload balancing and matching and finding out, but I strongly believe that's why you see whether the AWS Lambda to functions in Azure, they are getting better and better, and they're also getting in a way that how can you start stitching them together when you do need something more than what the individual one of those lambdas or fast can right? Where and for our products, we are doing what we call Intuit also is like those standards and the paved roads we are declaring. We started with some of them, like where you are getting where to start, like a low hanging fruit items. Then we are going higher order of within the products now, as we have taken this whole microservices journey, right? We have the things running on Kubernetes. Now, next level, as you start slicing things out and truly become like anything as a service model that you can actually scale as you need, whether horizontally or globally, right? So there we are being disciplined about, but what we try to do is we declare those patterns and the standards, so that there is very little room for making anything silly, stupid to go, because I have heard people incurring huge costs because somebody might have put an infinite loop because it was easy spinning off a Lambda, but having an infinite loop that cost, and then next thing you knew, you have $100,000 bills because you didn't know what you were doing, right? So I believe, to summarize, I strongly believe in the serverless way. And I do believe that there will be more patterns and checks and balances, even from the hyperscalers will come out, so that it makes easier for the customers to adapt. But you have to, again, just like any technology, right? There are pros and cons you can do. You have to have prescriptive guidelines of when to use, and when not to is even more important.
Yeah, in my interviews with many people from tech companies, they all agree that innovations are the driving force of any business, right? But innovations are very often associated with smaller companies that are able to move faster, right? They don't have they don't need to get the approval. They have this capability to jump right in the problem and build a solution. So from your perspective, what are the challenges associated with being a large organization and moving and innovating at a faster pace?
Yeah, great. So if you like, as you said, like Intuit, I think in this, even this big Intuit machine, like I think our CEO, Sasan, like, we have, I mean, I have not seen, such a like accounting company kind rebranding and reimagining what it could be, right? So, and that would not happen like now, starting with like all those fragmented products, like whether accounting, QuickBooks, to whether, on the consumer side tax, but bring that, we are like the ERP for small businesses, like the NetSuites of the world for small businesses, right? And that would not happen if you are not able to innovate and if you wanted to stick like that, just where you started, right? So I think the focus on powering prosperity around the world, the focus on making it easy for the small businesses and being a system of record for everything has pushed us to think about differently. Now, having said that, you could still have that vision, but how could you accelerate in order to be able to reach your vision and goals with innovation? Because you could do like at a different pace, but there are a lot of startups and outsiders that might be doing it at the same thing, but might be faster, right? So within Intuit, our innovation, one is obviously within your own what you're working on, do it better and efficient and in the way that is more relevant and competitive, but also bring in outside in, right? So with acquisitions also we bring in sometimes technologies that are more forward looking, and whether it is Meta, whether it is whatever that might be, right? Are those the trends that we do watch? So we have our future technologies team that are always watching for those next tech radar and the next signals that are there that are going to be disrupting, and having an incubation environment where you can still experiment and fail fast and get it in that, right? Secondly, we also have, last year we launched Intuit Ventures, which is looking at now how do you do that even in a little bit different scale. That, just like, you're familiar with Google Ventures, Workday Ventures, and others, we have our own ventures that are always looking for. And so, and as an architecture team, it comes back is how do we start creating that architecture environment where you can still have that experimentation happening, so that you don't take that away. Like, again, it goes back to creating that environment that where it is okay to start experimenting and doing things at a smaller scale, maybe before it becomes mainstream and you roll it out, right? So we have, as things that are more enterprisey kind, like where you have to, thou shall do this. There are things where you might have choices that you can pick A, B, C, like we talk about serverless versus this, that, or there could be some things that we don't know enough, so you can be free to do and get into, then we have a life cycle of introduction of those technologies. So that innovation, I think bigger companies, my lens is you can actually do better. Like I have worked in innovation, like at Arrow Electronics, which is a $33 billion company, but I was hired to build their .com. And we ran like a startup, but under the auspices of Arrow Corporate, right? So you have the funding, you don't have to worry about running out of funding. So you can see, so if you have that, if you can create that environment, that how do you, innovate within the bigger umbrella and give them the, like still have checks and balances, how far do you want to go, right? I personally believe innovation has better chance of survival if in bigger corporates, if you have the right leadership who can think outside the box and who can create you an environment to experiment and fail fast. And I have my philosophy, like you have to grow where you are planted. You have to figure it out. You have to create that environment where you're planted to allow you to still, innovate or whatever your goals are, right? You cannot change those, like the laws of physics, right? You cannot change, but you can make it, you can create avenues for, where your innovative juices are still allowed to flow.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about innovation, it's important to remember that innovation don't happen spontaneously, right? Out of nowhere. People that are working in a certain industry, in a certain domain, they have this exposure to certain issues and problems that their customers have, their users have, And if they have this curious mind, right, the ability to see and notice what can be changed, what can be, updated, this is where actually this innovation lab and miracle happen. So maybe you could share with us an example, right, of radical innovation that happened under your leadership at Intuit or other companies that where you used to work previously.
I would say I'll give example of Veritas, right? One of our data management company, right? And I went there when Veritas was just spun off from Symantec. Veritas has been a data management leader for years, right? But then last 10 years, they were under the Symantec security. So there was a lot of identity crisis when I joined. So just the backdrop. One of our bigger challenge, like innovation, talking about innovation, was Veritas' secret sauce were their existing customers and renewals, right? If they are not renewing, then you are not growing, kind of. That was a bigger chunk of your revenue, right? But guess what? We did not have a visibility into what their products, like what they owned, what they were using, and are they actually paying what they're supposed to be paying, right? So which came down to the whole telemetry and the metering, right? But now we have this big monolith products that have grown for 30 years that supports all versions of infrastructure like it is a backup product. Now, guess what? If you want to start saying that I need a heart surgery to do it, now you have to start instrumenting every customer's, every environment you're backing up because you need to send me telemetry. That's like moving mountains. That's not going to happen, right? So me and my team and under my CTO I used to report to, we preach like, hey, we will do this as a sidecar pattern and create in a way that now I'll give you an telemetry interface that you need to write. And once you write into it, after that, how do I bring it in? And then I start building a modern data platform. I start building a modern data architecture and an application that can start by sniffing in this data and then showing it and helping it to understand, getting you a visibility, right? So this actually, I got a lot of pushback when we talked about this, like, hey, we have tried this many years. It won't happen. So one of my thing was, we don't have 3 years, we have 3 months. And here is what we're going to do. We'll build an MVP, we'll take the hardest, and again, not solve every product combinations, we'll focus on one of the most important product that's going to be, and then start building that. 3 months with a couple of fresh graduates in the team and a small team of assembly. It was like begging and borrowing assembly because I'm in the architecture team. I had my solution architect, 2 fresh engineers really out of school, and then we got a couple of contractors to kind of assemble together, and we built the MVP. And then that became the linchpin of siphoning like data from legacy to start putting it in, right? And then it became like, we started like first with just, then we started adding more predictive model, then we started making it smarter to understand and making it beneficial for customers. So there's just one, kind of one sample, but that happens everywhere. And I think innovation with, again, prescriptive cases, right? Before that, some places, like, again, many a time, people just even innovation doesn't mean you have to come with the next brilliant idea for a next brilliant product, right? Just sometimes even finding what you have and being able to do more with that. Like this telemetry started giving these opportunities about like data insights that we didn't even know, like, are these the right workloads we should be protecting? Or actually what product features, start informing your product features. So not only you are like helping with the renewals, now actually you are making it forward looking for what product features you should be building, right? And obviously this is not me alone, right? Once you start this, then you start working along with your product managers, engineers, everybody. But first step is taking that bold first step that yes, it is possible. And what are the 3 things you need to do in order to make it happen?
Almost half of the audience of the Prime U are women in technology. So I thought that you might be able to distill some of the lessons that you have learned along your career in tech and share and inspire new generations of women just building their career in the industry.
Thank you. There are so many lessons, right? I think number one, I would say, be confident, have confidence in yourself, believe in yourself. You're really good. No, and you don't need anybody's approval for that. You come in with an authority that you are good in something and you are, have that confidence to do, but you show through your work, right? And I think one of my biggest lesson, I would say, whether for both men and women early, is embrace failure. If you fail more often, I think it will make you more resilient. I think I sometimes blame myself, like, being a topper in school and colleges, whatever, right? You are always doing, like, you haven't seen like what it makes to fail for the first time, right? I think failure in your career, do not be afraid and make it a point to learn as much as you can, for not because you failed, but what are the things you could learn from there and pick on and move from the next level, next point of your, like, whatever you are doing in the job, right? Thirdly, I would say, be the change you want to see. Like, if you want to be a change agent, I know we all have ideas. We want to see things happening. Do not wait for somebody else to make it happen for you. It is you. If you want to be, and really be the change you want to see. That's like, and it can happen at any level. Do not worry about what level of the organization you are. And if the company culture does not allow you, then just leave and go and pick up a next job. But you should be able to have whatever opinion you believe in, you should be able to express that, and change can happen it can start from happening at any level, right? And I think one of the thing growing up, which I was very fortunate to work with a lot of really good managers and my colleagues or, business partners. But I think thinking about who is your mentor, who is your coach, who can be your sponsor, and how do you start creating that network of, like, almost like your board of advisors, your personal board, I think is very important. And it could be, people that in your current job, it could be your past, it could be. So start thinking about any woman out there, like, if you want to rise through the ranks and establish, it is not just about what you know, right? It is about who you know. So this is one of the things I learned, like, as I love people, right? I have a lot of people that I am always, coaching or grooming, or we have relationship, but you have to be out there. First of all, nobody will know if you are good and sitting in your, like, closed door. There's like zillion people out there, right? You have to make a conscious effort to network. It doesn't mean that you have to always be like a social butterfly, but you have to be in the know. So somebody thinks of that person, like, and most of the time as you grow up, I think it is not about a specific role that you want to apply for. Many a time people might say, I get pinged, I'm sure you too, I need somebody like Geeta, right? Because they know me, how I think, they know me, my operating model, right? So I think getting out and making yourself known, what you have to offer is important, and it is your responsibility. Job like starts from you. You might be lucky, somebody might be doing for you, but you have to get out there and do it.
Yeah, that's actually excellent point here. Working on this podcast and reaching out to many women in technology, great women with excellent expertise, bright minds, right? They often deny themselves that opportunity to network, to build their visibility, to build their credibility, not only within their company, their organization, but in the larger scale, right, in the whole industry. And I think that point where you said it's actually your own responsibility. We can talk as long as, as possible about the visibility, about the diversity and integrity, right? But that's also something that we should personally take our responsibility for, if it feels daunting at first, to go and talk on a podcast at a round table, being an expert, it's something that you should immediately know this is the right thing to do, because it will benefit you in so many ways, that it will impact your career, probably the salary, the network, the better opportunities. So yeah, I would totally support that and encourage women to make that step and create their visibility.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, I used to also think that way, and I still think like, why am I, I have nothing to, but when you start seeing people are actually role modeling, I think we have, again, I feel fiduciary responsibility for next generations and across the world, right? When I get somebody reaching out to me on LinkedIn from somewhere else, Australia or New Zealand, that I heard, and this is what inspired me, that gives me like so much joy that, oh my God, I said something which I didn't even realize. So each of us, I think we do not even realize what we portray, what we say, how we carry ourselves does carry an image to somebody else who is watching you, maybe a little girl somewhere, or it could be a man, it could be anybody for that matter, right?
Yeah.
So just be bold, be courageous, do whatever you are doing, and do,
Geeta, thank you so much for your time, for your leadership, for your inspiring example, right? And for your valuable insight. I hope we will be able to have you on the show more often. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for reaching out, and I would love to be in touch.